Hey guys, it's Helious. First of all, thank you guys so much for helping me get to 100 subscribers. When I started uploading videos in 2020, I never thought I would get this far. I'll have more at the end, so stick around to hear about it. I fancy myself to be somewhat of a gamer, though first and foremost I am a musician, and apparently according to my view counts a memer. I spend a lot of my free time enjoying games instead of trivial pursuits, such as touching grass or having friends. Over the course of the 20 years I have been around, I have played many different games, yet not very many have had an impact on me and kept me around for more than a couple weeks. Recently, I have thought about which games I both remember fondly and continue to enjoy today, and thought to rank them against each other to figure out what my true favorite is. Keep in mind that I only considered games I have played and completed, and the ranking is my opinion. Also, I do not condone piracy of video games. Without further ado, here's number 16. Chrysalis is an adventure game developed by SNK and released on the NES in 1990. It is somewhat similar to the original Legend of Zelda in its gameplay, but without the limitations of the grid system. It is also far easier to understand and play without a complete guide. When I first bought a Nintendo Switch Online subscription several years ago, I came across this game in the NES library and was hooked. The game occurs in the aftermath of a devastating world war that decimated the human population and caused the landscape to be filled with aggressive mutant creatures. After the war, the idea of science was deemed the culprit and abandoned, with the people returning to primitive technologies and magic. In order to prevent such a tragedy from ever happening again, survivors of the war built a floating tower in the sky as a threat to any wrongdoers. Over the course of the game, the player must defeat the Emperor Dragon, who plans to take over the tower and use its power to subjugate the world. What I love most about this game is its simple gameplay, intuitive progression, and the significant lore behind everything if you are willing to look into it. The soundtrack is also fantastic as well, by far the best I have heard from an NES title. The game was remade for the Game Boy Color in 2000, but the screen size and modified story have caused it to be deemed far inferior to the original NES release by fans. If you are interested in checking out Chrysalis for yourself, it can be accessed with Nintendo Switch Online, is included in the SNK 40th Anniversary Collection, which is available on all platforms, or of course any other ways you might play NES titles. Fire Emblem Warriors 3 Hopes is an action hack-and-slash game developed by Omega Force and released on the Nintendo Switch in 2022. It is a spin-off to the Fire Emblem series and an alternate timeline midquel to Fire Emblem Three Houses. It is also the spiritual successor to the 2017 title Fire Emblem Warriors. Three Hopes successfully meshes the strategical aspects of the Fire Emblem series with the gameplay of other Warriors titles, making for a fun experience that also requires some thought. I was very excited to see this title announced and bought it as soon as it came out that summer. This game takes place mostly within the time skip of Fire Emblem Three Houses in an alternate timeline that causes events to play out much earlier and differently than in Three Houses. The playable protagonist, Shez, is a young mercenary that is tasked by an entity in his head to track down and kill a rival mercenary known as the Ashen Demon. He soon stumbles upon students of the Officers' Academy, meant to educate the youth of the three nations that inhabit the continent, and is recruited by one of the nations of the player's choice. The bulk of the story consists of a war fought by the chosen nation, with each chosen route being different and worth playing. The gameplay of this game is great. I do enjoy cutting through hordes of enemies with planned sequences of attacks in pursuit of a larger objective. What makes this game shine, however, is its deep story and lore. There are 6 different branches of the storyline, all different and equally interesting. With prior knowledge of the world from Three Houses, I noticed a ton of details that explained things left unexplained in the previous title, references to minor events and characters, deeper world building, and even left me with plenty of questions to speculate on. If you are interested in Fire Emblem Warriors 3 Hopes, it is available in both physical and digital form on the Nintendo Switch. Super Smash Bros. Ultimate is a fighting platform developed by Bandai Namco and Sora and released on the Nintendo Switch in 2018. It is a continuation of the wildly popular Smash series and is the most popular fighting game in the world. If you own a Switch, this is the most important game to have. It is great for both single-player content, as a party game, or even played competitively. Its inclusion of characters from so many beloved franchises ensures there is a character for everyone. I purchased Smash Ultimate alongside my Switch in early 2020. What made this game such a cultural phenomenon, aside from its party game nature, is its DLC. Starting in Smash 4 on the Wii U and 3DS, the developers started adding extra characters from third-party franchises as DLC, such as Final Fantasy's Cloud or Bayonetta. In Ultimate, this trend continued with 12 additional characters being released as DLC, with 7 of them being from third parties. By far the most hyped up moment of this was when Minecraft's Steve was announced as a DLC character in late 2020. Immediately after the announcement, Twitter experienced an outage causing speculation that Steve is so powerful that he literally broke the internet. If you ask me, this was both the peak of Smash Ultimate's cultural influence and also the beginning of its decline in quality and enjoyment in my eyes. If I think it is the most important game for any Switch owner to have, then why is it so low on this list? Throughout my last 2 years of high school and first year of college, when the game was still in development, I loved it primarily due to the hype surrounding it. I, unlike my friends, was not willing to put in the hours to perfect techniques and become very, very good at the game like they are. I rarely played it in a chaotic party game setting, mostly opting for 1v1's tournament style. I also quickly grew bored of the single-player game mode as it is entirely gameplay focused, with the same gameplay as if playing against friends or CPUs and without any sort of story. Eventually I got too bored and frustrated to continue playing the game, but I still recognize it as one of the best games ever made. If you haven't already got a copy of Smash Ultimate, it is available in both physical and digital formats on the Nintendo Switch, with DLC available on the Switch eShop. Ace Attorney Investigations 2 is a graphic novel game developed by Capcom and released exclusively in Japan on the DS in 2011. It is a sequel of a spin-off of the original Ace Attorney trilogy focused on the initial antagonist of the series, Prosecutor Miles Edgeworth. The game follows the same investigation/argument phase as the original trilogy, but with a far more open-ended investigation phase that allows you to control Edgeworth and interact with his surroundings to find clues, reveal story tidbits, and further the investigation. This game also introduces a logic chess mechanic, a timed debate where the aim is to break down the argumentative defenses of your opponent. The game is a direct sequel to Ace Attorney Investigations' Miles Edgeworth, and both take place soon after the events of the original Ace Attorney trilogy. Unfortunately, there is no way to give a background to the story without spoiling any of the other games. This game stands out among the rest of the series due to its gameplay, intense story, and great soundtrack. I found it to be the most immersive, have the best cast of characters, and an interesting but high-pressure story that kept me on my toes. The one downfall of this game stems from its genre having a low to non-existent replay value. There is really no reason to replay the game unless you have forgotten major details of the story and want to experience them again. If you are interested in Ace Attorney Investigations 2, a fan translation of the game has been made. I'll leave it at that. Assassin's Creed 3 is a historical stealth/action game developed by Ubisoft and published on PlayStation 3, Xbox 360, and Wii U in 2012. It was re-released as Assassin's Creed 3 Remastered for modern platforms in 2019. It is the third installment in the series, using historical events to get information in order to stop the apocalypse of 2012. It is a single-player game with a variety of content to explore. I purchased Assassin's Creed 3 Remastered for Switch in 2021 after seeing it discounted at Walmart. The game follows the fictional Englishman Haytham Kenway during the events of the French and Indian War, and native Connor Kenway during the events of the American Revolution. It brings to life many historical figures from that time period and was very interesting to play as someone who enjoys learning about history. There are 3 large maps to explore with many side quests and optional objectives. The game includes extensive naval combat, which serves as a nice contrast to the on-foot combat that comprises the rest of the game. This game stands out to be mostly due to its historical nature. It has a very interesting story, and interacting with historical figures is just fascinating to me. The remastered release of the game comes with the original DLC plus a separate game, Assassin's Creed III Liberation, which follows a slave girl in New Orleans, which is a nice plus. However, the replay value of the game is not very high due to its single story. Once the game has been 100% completed, which is admittedly quite hard to do, there's really no reason to replay it until you forget the story. Assassin's Creed III Remastered is available on PlayStation 4, Xbox One, Nintendo Switch, and Windows. If you are interested in having fun while learning about important events of the history of the United States, I strongly recommend this game. Pokemon Legends Arceus is an open-world RPG developed by Game Freak and released on the Nintendo Switch in 2022. It serves as a prequel to Pokemon Diamond and Pearl, taking place during the colonization of the Sinnoh region. The game is a complete reimagination of the standard Pokemon formula, with many new mechanics, making the game much more realistic. Perhaps the most prominent example of this is the ability to aim and throw Pokeballs, allowing the player to catch Pokemon without engaging in battle if approached unseen. The game follows the player, presumably the protagonist of Diamond and Pearl, as they are sent back in time to the early days of the Sinnoh region. The player is adopted into the Galaxy Expedition Team, one of 3 conflicting factions present on the island. The story is pretty standard for a Pokemon game, but there are some plot twists that set it apart from most of the series. I love this game due to its far more realistic mechanics paired with the goal of collecting and indexing every species in the region by completing specific tasks. The ability to gather and manage resources requires some planning, but is still not difficult to require farming. The progression is smooth and enjoyable, and loading times are pretty good for the Switch. If you are interested in Pokemon Legends Arceus, it is available in both physical and digital forms on the Nintendo Switch. LEGO Star Wars: The Complete Saga is an action-adventure game developed by TT Games and released on the PlayStation 3, Xbox 360, Wii, and DS in 2007. It was also later released for mobile and PC. It is a retelling of the events of the prequel and original Star Wars trilogies in the beloved goofy LEGO style. The game is structured by episode with 6 chapters each, totaling 36 playable levels, plus several bonus levels and challenges. There are many secrets to discover in all of the levels, and some of them unlock upgrades you can purchase from the shop. Being a LEGO fan and Star Wars fan before Disney ruined it, this game was perfect for me. There are so many characters with different abilities to play around with, and it is always fun finding your favorites wandering around the cantina. This game has huge nostalgia value to me. In contrast with the Skywalker Saga, which was released in 2022, this game is incredibly fun. It is quite true to the original material as well, while also adding so much fun gameplay. It is also extremely difficult to 100% complete, and the replay value is very high due to the insane amount of content it has to offer. The closest I have ever gotten to completing this game is around 97%, still missing some of the most difficult challenges. If you are interested in reliving this masterpiece, it is available on its launch platforms and available on Steam. Fire Emblem Three Houses is a strategy RPG developed by Intelligent Systems and Koei Tecmo and released on the Nintendo Switch in 2019. It is the 16th installment in the Fire Emblem series and quickly became its best-selling title. Like its midquel, Three Hopes, Three Houses has 3 story branches to choose from with their own unique challenges. There is also a secret 4th story route, which is difficult to access unless you know what you're doing. In addition to the combat strategy the series is known for, Three Houses also includes a complex time management and social system, which some have likened to the Persona series. It has a memorable and lovable cast of characters, including Edelgard, Dimitri, and Claude. The game is split into 2 phases with a 5-year time skip in between, being the Academy phase and the War phase. In the Academy phase, the player is a professor at the Officers Academy heading the class from a nation of the player's choice. In the War phase, the player reunites with their class and leads the nation's war effort. Aside from the conflict involving all 3 nations on the continent, there is also a religious institution that has influence over all regions and an underground threat dwelling in the dark, puppeteering sinister events. This game is fantastic. It holds a wide variety of styles, having some content for every type of player. The story and world building is the best in the series, and the player is directly invested in every step of the way. Characters all have unique personalities, making the cast also by far the most memorable in the series. The player character, Byleth, was also added to the DLC of Smash Ultimate in 2020, drawing even more attention to the game. It also has its own DLC, which includes cosmetic and helpful items, as well as a side story separate from the main game. The replay value of this game is extremely high until all 4 story routes are completed, then it diminishes dramatically. The first half of the game is almost identical across all 4 routes, which gets quite dull after playing it several times. There's also no option to skip the first half of the game, and the route split happens at the very beginning, making it unfortunately impossible to avoid. If you are interested in exploring the world of 3 houses, it is available in physical and digital formats on the Nintendo Switch with DLC available on the Switch eShop. Mario Kart Wii is a racing game developed and published by Nintendo on the Wii in 2008. It is currently the 18th best-selling game of all time, selling even more copies than Smash Ultimate or Breath of the Wild, and many people in my generation grew up playing this game. It has a total of 32 tracks and several game modes. Its official multiplayer functionality shut down long ago, but it is still possible to play multiplayer today through a third-party server. This game was the most influential game of my childhood. Once, my parents forbade me from playing the game for an entire summer because I wouldn't stop talking about it. This game never gets old. There is a ton of content to unlock and always room to improve your skills. There is enough random chance with items to keep races interesting, along with a different cast of opponents each session. There are also many mods for this game that include hundreds of custom tracks to race on when the original 32 become too repetitive. If you are interested in Mario Kart Wii, it is available in disc form on the Nintendo Wii. Pokemon Black and White are a duo of RPG games developed by Game Freak and released on the DS in 2010. They are the last Pokemon games of the 2D era, and the last installments of the series before gimmicks were added in every generation. Though the games did not sell very well and were received relatively poorly upon launch compared to Diamond and Pearl, the games are remembered very fondly today by the now adults who grew up playing those games, such as I. I could make another video ranking my favorite Pokemon games after playing them all, so please leave a comment down below if you'd like to see that. The story of Black and White is a standard Pokemon story with the player beating 8 gym leaders and the Elite Four before usurping the region's champion. Team Plasma, the antagonist, has plans of their own and the player must also thwart them. Even though the game is over 10 years old, I won't spoil any more of the story because it is that good. The reason I love this game so much can be explained as 3 points. It is the most advanced game without game-breaking gimmicks. Its story is so good, and the soundtrack. I consider Generation 5 to be the peak of Pokemon, with gimmicks such as Mega Evolution and the new friendship system breaking the balance of the game and ruining the challenge and sucking the enjoyment out of it. There is no nonsense and no unfair advantages, just like the entire series up to that point. The story involving Team Plasma is a masterpiece. Frankly, it does not fit into a Pokemon game at all. It is far too dark and complex for a children's game. It involves far more than military might of the evil team. The character N, though controversial, is in my objective opinion the best written character in the entire series. The soundtrack of the game is also fantastic. It is a perfect blend of modern composition that can now be accommodated due to the DS's large number of audio tracks and somewhat retro-sounding sound fonts that is food for the soul. My personal favorites are the Legendary Pokemon and Elite Four battle themes. Definitely worth a listen. Unfortunately, the only way to play Pokemon Black and White is to purchase a cart from a third party. Also, unfortunately, due to the game's insane nostalgia value nowadays, they are very expensive. However, it is definitely worth a play. Fire Emblem Genealogy of the Holy War is a strategy RPG developed by Intelligent Systems and released exclusively in Japan on the Super Famicom in 1996. This fourth installment in the Fire Emblem series is quite odd in how it is structured. It consists of 10 very, very long chapters with a prologue, endgame, and 15-year time skip in the middle. In contrast, the typical Fire Emblem title is a prologue, 20 to 30 chapters, and an endgame. Also, in contrast to other titles, each unit has their own pool of gold as opposed to the army sharing all resources. This makes allocation of resources very important. The story begins on the continent of Jugdral, where 8 nations exist in relative peace. The geography of Jugdral is loosely based on Europe, and it is interesting to observe the parallels in both geography and culture. The primary character is Sigurd, the son of a lord of the central nation of Granville. The neighboring nation of Isaac lays siege to the holy city of Darna, and Sigurd's father and the crown prince of Granville embark on a quest to quell the siege. To me, this game does 2 things perfectly and 1 thing to a mediocre degree. The gameplay to me is a bit dull and can feel like a slog through muddy waters at times due to the gargantuan maps and very long chapters. I much prefer the traditional design of a Fire Emblem game being separated into smaller chapters that can easily be completed in one sitting, as opposed to several hours spread across a few days. However, all of that can be forgiven in my eyes since the soundtrack and the story of this game are immaculate. This game has the second best soundtrack I have ever heard, and this is coming from a music student. Its sound font has a great blend between rounded and sharp waveforms, and the game's composer uses it masterfully. It is incredibly effective at conveying strong emotions. For instance, take a listen to Lopter and tell me you don't feel a sense of dread and malice. Or listen to Conversation 1 and tell me you don't feel a sense of mourning yet urgency. Or listen to When the Rush Comes and tell me you don't feel invigorated and raring to take on any foe, yet solemnly aware of the great sacrifices that came before. I will let the music speak for itself. The story of Genealogy of the Holy War is, in my objective, simple. Like Pokemon Black and White, it is dark, complex, and intense. Just to the 80 trillionth degree. There is so much going on behind the scenes and so much world building and lore to look into and connect the dots. It is so emotionally compelling and inspiring. No matter how dreadful the gameplay can be at times, the music and story is so compelling that it will captivate anyone with a heart for hours at a time. Fire Emblem Genealogy of the Holy War is only technically available as a Japanese cart for the Super Famicom or in the Super Famicom library for Japanese Switch Online users. Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance is an action-adventure game developed by Platinum Games and released on PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360 in 2013. It is a spin-off of the Metal Gear series, opting for action-packed and intense gameplay as opposed to stealth-based. Don't worry, you can still hide in cardboard boxes. The game is divided into 8 sections, each completable in one sitting. However, there are many achievements, optional objectives, upgrades, and collectibles that make this game worth playing multiple times through. This game follows the main character, Raiden, a cyborg in 2018 that is tasked to protect the Prime Minister of an unspecified nation in Africa. The story is very deep and philosophical, dealing with the nature of conflict and even memes. No, I'm not joking. If you are okay with spoilers, make sure to check out Maxor's An Incorrect Summary of Metal Gear Rising. It explains a lot, though somewhat inaccurately, but also reveals the origin of some of the many internet memes that stem from this game. Though the gameplay is diverse and fun, asking anyone who has played this game the one thing they remember most about it would be the soundtrack. The standard combat themes that play when fighting cyborg grunts are great, but the boss themes are absolutely phenomenal. Aside from just how they sound, you can look into the lyrics to gain more insight on the boss's character. Often, the bosses might seem one-sided or simple. After all, half of them only have at most a minute of screen time before you fight and slice them like salami. The game becomes somehow even more enjoyable when considering that the lyrics of the boss themes are coming from the minds of your foes themselves. The story is fairly simple and linear, but is incredibly detailed and nuanced when it comes to all the philosophical questions brought up. Unlike Fire Emblem Genealogy of the Holy War, Metal Gear Rising does all three of gameplay, story, and soundtrack very, very well. Metal Gear Rising Revengeance is available in disc form on its release platforms and also available on Steam with all DLC included. Fire Emblem Engage is a strategy RPG developed by Intelligent Systems and published on the Nintendo Switch in January 2023. As of the time of this video, it is the most recent installment of the Fire Emblem series. While the previous title, Three Houses, introduced complicated social and time management systems, Engage is considered a return to form for the series, doing away with both of them. It retained the central hub that can be explored with activity to do between chapters, but those are completely optional and provide limited benefit to the gameplay. The game was also initially slated to be released in 2020 to celebrate Fire Emblem's 30th anniversary and as a love letter to fans. Its hallmark feature is being able to call characters from previous Fire Emblem titles to aid you in battle. Unfortunately, the COVID pandemic foiled those plans and Intelligent Systems ported the first title of the series to the Switch, frankly stupidly available for only a limited time. The story of Engage takes place on a new continent of Helious, 1,000 years after a brutal war that pitted the forces of the Fell Dragons against the Divine Dragons in the human race. As an aid in the war effort, the Divine Dragons were able to call the spirits of prominent figures from across the series called Emblems and bound them to rings. During the war, the player character, Alir, was mortally wounded and forced into an indefinite slumber to heal. Eventually, the king of the Fell Dragons was imprisoned and peace restored to Helios. Out of the blue, one day the player character arises from their slumber and sets in motion the events of the story. This game is phenomenal. The gameplay is very engaging and fast-paced while also requiring careful planning of your strategy. The visuals are beautiful, a further evolution from what was present in Three Houses. The soundtrack and story are very good, but not amazing. My favorite tracks here are Unshaken Royal Confidence and Trial of Emblems for those who are interested. The story of the DLC, The Fell Xenologue, is another story. I won't spoil anything, but it is very well written with surprises at every turn. The soundtrack of the DLC is also significantly better than the base game, and the gameplay is very challenging. If you get engaged, the DLC is a must-have as well. Like with the Pokemon series, let me know in the comments below if you would like me to make a video ranking every Fire Emblem title. If you are interested in Fire Emblem Engage, it is available in both physical and digital form on the Nintendo Switch with DLC available on the Switch eShop. Sid Meier's Civilization 4 is a turn-based strategy game developed by Firaxis and published on PC and Mac in 2005. Its expansions, Warlords and Beyond the Sword, were released in 2006 and 2007 respectively. A standalone expansion, Colonization, was also released in 2008. Its theme, Baba Yedu, was the first piece from a video game soundtrack ever to win a Grammy Award. The gameplay of Civilization 4, much like the rest of the series, has the player take control of a selected or random civilization, usually starting in 4000 BC. Throughout the ages, the player must expand their empire, research technology, manage their populace and government, and raise and maintain a military. All this sounds very complicated, but the game does a great job of simplifying it if the player wishes. The game ends once a victory condition has been reached. These usually include a time victory, where the civilization with the highest score at the year 2050 wins, a diplomatic victory, where a civilization is elected the head of the United Nations, a domination victory, where a civilization controls a predetermined percentage of the world's population and land area, a space race victory, where a civilization successfully sends a rocket to Alpha Centauri, and a conquest victory, where a civilization eliminates all other civilizations. Throughout the game, the player can interact with other world leaders by trading resources, technologies, or even asking what they think of each other. However, be careful not to anger them too much, or bad things might happen.
Especially when it's Gandhi.
Much like a civilization winning a time victory, Civilization 4 has certainly stood the test of time. Its visuals are far ahead of its time for a 2005 game, and it has fun and interesting gameplay and an absolutely massive soundtrack. Even now, 18 years after the game was released, I find myself coming back to it periodically. If you get bored of raising civilizations from 4000 BC to victory, there are many custom-made scenarios that replicate specific world history events and many mods, several included in the base game, that range wildly from being an incredible simulation of history in Rise and Fall of Civilization, expanding the late-game content in Next War, expanding the game to an insane degree in Caveman 2 Cosmos, changing the setting to space in Final Frontier, or completely transforming the game into something else as an Afterworld. The customization of this game is incredible. Civilization 4 is available with all expansions included on Steam. Minecraft is a sandbox game developed by Mojang. It was pre-released as it was developed starting in 2009 and fully released on PC in 2011. It has since been ported to nearly every OS imaginable, even having a dedicated Raspberry Pi edition. It consists of a creative mode where the player has total control over the world with flight and infinite resources, and a survival mode where the player has health, hunger, and limited resources. The gameplay of Minecraft, specifically the survival mode, is entirely open-ended. There is a lot of content to explore in the randomly generated world that is over 7 times the size of the Earth's surface. The generally accepted end goal of the game is to defeat the Ender Dragon, but doing so by itself grants literally no reward aside from a trophy item and being able to return safely to the overworld. It is a sandbox game after all. It comes as no surprise that Minecraft is the best-selling game of all time and nearly everybody with internet access knows of it. After all, it has been receiving updates since its release over 10 years ago. It is a fantastic game with pretty good gameplay and a very good soundtrack. What makes this game shine, however, is the community. No, I'm not talking about streamers and YouTubers, though I enjoy those as much as anyone else. I am specifically talking about texture pack makers, map makers, and most importantly, the modders. There are literally hundreds of thousands of mods available, ranging from simple quality of life changes to complete overhauls of the game. This is possible thanks to the libraries of the game being open source. It is so easy to mod this game that even I am developing one.
Check it out, link is in the description.
It is also fun to discover random and absurd things about the game. For instance, the enchanted golden apple, a single stackable item, weighs as much as the Statue of Liberty, or that gravity in the game is incredibly high, yet the player can easily jump more than 1 meter straight up. The possibilities are endless. Minecraft is available on literally every platform imaginable. If you don't have it, get it. Trust me. There are a few games that I really like, but were just overshadowed by the games on this list. I love these games, but I just love everything on this list more. In no particular order, the honorable mentions are Wii Sports, Star Wars Battlefront, Pokemon Sword and Shield, and Pokemon Trading Card Game Online, and Pokemon Trading Card Game Live. With that out of the way, let's get to the best game of all time. Terraria is an adventure sandbox game developed by Relogic and released on PC in 2011. It has since been ported to Mac, PlayStation, Xbox, Wii U, Switch, 3DS, and mobile. Currently, only the desktop, current-gen console, and mobile versions are being updated. Terraria is often dismissed as a Minecraft clone. As a fan of both, I assure you those allegations are not remotely true. Though the two games coincidentally have similar graphics and tile and cube-based worlds, they were developed completely independently from each other at around the same time. They later drew inspiration from each other, however. Minecraft's 1.4 update in 2012 introduced its second boss, the Wither, which was inspired by Terraria's boss summoning mechanic. Terraria's 1.2.1 update in 2013 added the Creeper vanity set. Both games' title screens also have splash text referencing each other. It is no surprise to me that these kindred spirits are my two favorite games. Terraria's gameplay is somewhat similar to Minecraft survival mode, but restricted to 2 dimensions and having an insane amount of content. For instance, there are 32 bosses in Terraria as opposed to Minecraft's 2, and currently 5,455 items as opposed to Minecraft's 419. The lead developer, Redigit, has a knack for adding jokes such as the golden shower magic weapon, or poo blocks, or the cactus toilet. The progression is also much more varied, with 4 classes available for players to mix and match that upgrade at different times. As someone who gets easily bored without a specific goal, a game with a more fixed progression and more content is far preferable to me. There is a good amount of lore that can be explored both in-game, speculated, or has been revealed officially, but it is quite confusing, and to be frank, most of the official lore contrasts with my own headcanon that I developed before it was officially explained. I can also make a video about Terraria's lore. If that interests you, make sure to let me know in the comments down below. One of Terraria's strongest points lies in its soundtrack. Its composer, Scott Lloyd Shelley of Resonance Array, has composed many great tracks for the game over the years, ranging from the peaceful overworld day theme, to the kooky alternate underground theme, to the menacing golem or goblin army themes. I love it all. I've been a huge fan of this game since 2015 and have accrued way too many hours on Steam.
Please don't look at my Steam page.
Terraria has received regular updates since its release over a decade ago, and its final update is set to come out sometime in the relatively near future. This is the best game of all time, hands down, of those that I have played. I cannot recommend this game enough to anyone with an electronic device. Terraria is available on Steam, GOG.com, PlayStations 3 through 5, PS Vita, Xbox 360, One and Series X, 3DS, Wii U, Switch, iOS, and Android. And those are the best games of all time from a purely objective and infallible viewpoint. I had a lot of fun thinking about and making this video, reflecting on the roles that these games have played throughout my life. If you liked this video, make sure to like and subscribe to let me know to make more content like this. For those of you who stayed to the end, thanks so much for supporting my channel. I would like to grow my channel moving forward, but am at an impasse as to what content to make. In the past, I have made clarinet covers of game soundtracks and some memes, tried a gaming video that deservedly failed horribly, and now a video essay. I could also just sit down and talk about random things in the style of Charlie or Mudahar. Just let me know what you would like to see from me in the future. Who knows, I might even do a face reveal someday. I'm going into my senior year of college next year and won't have a ton of time, but would still like to have this channel active as a pet project. Anyway, I've rambled for long enough. Y'all have a fantastic day and see you soon. Till next time.